Powered by Go Goat Sports in partnership with TSN. It is season 4, and this is episode 25 of the Roy and Dregs podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. Now, ordinarily, Ray, we're comfortable, right? We're in our own home offices, home studios. We've got a fancy app that we open up. We see each other beautifully. Little different circumstances. We record episode 25 Tuesday morning because, man, Vancouver gets slapped in the face again with a snowstorm, and here you are without power and internet. So we're doing this.
No, we have
on a cell phone.
Yeah, we have a one room that is powered. That's it. Okay. The room I'm in, the kitchen basically, and so we're good that way. However, the airport's closed. And like the roads, I don't know who's going anywhere today.
Yeah.
So it's just after 8:00. I've been shoveling snow since 6:30, and my oldest son Matt was there, and so we were like, what I like about shoveling snow, it's quiet.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it's such a menial task. I mean, push the snow from here to there and pitch it over the little hill that you've built before. So yeah, that's where we're at now. The real challenge here, Dregs, is right there. That's Reese. And Reese is without internet. This is going to be a tough snow day. So I think they're digging out the sleds, and we're going to go later today.
Good. That's excellent. Have fun no matter what the circumstance. Loved the snow days back in the day. All right, we'll get to our headlines in just a moment, the Roy and Dregs Hockey Podcast. But first of all, our headlines presented by Boston Pizza are all about the idea, and many people have written about it, the Athletic, Ken Campbell, go down the list. At TSN, we've talked about the renaming of the major trophies. So why don't we kind of sink our teeth into that in headlines? But before we get to that, a hockey event that occurred last night. Between the Islanders and the Colorado Avalanche, the Avs win that hockey game 1-0. So a tight game. Cale Makar is called for a tripping penalty on Matt Barzal of the New York Islanders. Now, the official that called it didn't have a great angle as Makar.
No, the other way around. Barzal got called for the hook on.
Sorry.
Makar.
Yes. I screwed it up. The official that called the penalty didn't have a good angle on it. So he calls the penalty, and being the honest human being that he is, Cale Makar goes to the official and said, "No, that's not a penalty. I tripped. I toe picked, or I caught an edge, or whatever he did," which almost never happens based on the skill set of Cale Makar. Automatically, I'm thinking, tight game. You're set to go on the power play, and you just decline. I mean, we know he's a high character individual, but automatically I'm thinking, would I have done that? And I think I'd say, no, I would have taken the power play. I mean, stuff is missed or overcalled all the time. What do you think?
Not a chance I would have done that.
Yeah.
Like I can't even, I was trying to think when I saw the play, like how many times did I get a high stick that really wasn't a high stick? Maybe in the battle that maybe it was your own guy's stick that hit you, and this was long before video review. I wasn't saying anything. We had a power play, and so I didn't even really know what to think about that. I'm like, it's kind of not his job. That would be like, like a pass interference play, and the receiver saying, no, that wasn't pass interference, or a strike 3 in a baseball game, and the hitter or the pitcher saying, no, that was actually outside. Like, it's such a random thing. I don't even really know what to think about it.
I'll give him credit though. I mean, and if you're Jared Bednar or any of his teammates, even Barzal, of course, post game acknowledged that's rare, certainly unusual. What are they gonna? It's not like Bednar's gonna throw him under the bus and say, "I don't know what he was thinking there." It's not gonna happen.
No, but I can't imagine. I mean, it happening very often. Like, honestly, I don't think I've ever seen that.
No,
I really don't.
we've seen guys pulled out of the penalty box, right? After, I mean, that's happened probably a dozen or more times. I don't know, but we're used to seeing that. But this was out there. All right, let's dive into headlines, again presented by Boston Pizza. And as we teed up off the top of the podcast, we want to go through the major awards. I understand the history, so do you, of course, deeply, of each award and why they were named. And every time we in the media have asked Commissioner Bettman, the head of hockey operations, Colin Campbell, the league in general, about the notion of changing the names to become more current, you get pushback. Now we honor and admire the tradition of the game and those who helped forge the league back in the 1920s, et cetera. So I don't know. I don't buy that argument. I understand it to a point. I just feel like it's archaic when you look at some of the megastars that the NHL has produced over time. So your thoughts on the Hart. So now the Hart Trophy for most valuable is named after former Montreal Canadiens GM and head coach Cecil Hart back in 1923. I mean, who would be the obvious rename? Gretzky?
Well, I mean, to me, there's two players. It's Gretzky or Howe.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have, like, I'm not so stuck up on who the names have to be, but that they have to be different, or I'd like them to be different. They don't have to be anything. But if you ask 99.5% of the winners of the Hart Trophy over the last 25 years, who's coming up with Cecil Hart's name?
Yeah.
Nobody. So this is my plan for all of these: is you take the original trophy, you put it in the Hall of Fame. You have a new trophy with the renamed trophy, I guess. And that's the one that's presented. And when it's not being presented at the awards, it's in the Hall of Fame next to the Hart Trophy. Right. So yes, Wayne Gretzky for me, for sure. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. But
then the next one should be easy though, right?
Which is?
Art Ross.
So here's the issue, is that that's why I say I don't care which the name is. If you flipped Gretzky and Howe on those two trophies,
same, right?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, like, Wayne Gretzky's acknowledged as the greatest player of all time. So I mean, I'm sure there's people that will argue one way or the other somewhere else, but for most people, I think that's the answer. So that should be the Hart. And then, that gets you to the Art Ross, who, again, it says Art Ross, but who knows in today's game who Art Ross is. Here's the thing: you're not discarding history, Dregs.
No, I agree.
You're building upon the history with the next group of historic players.
100% agree. Yeah. And look, again, just to revisit the pushback from the National Hockey League, it's a bad idea until the NHL decides that it's time for change. And then all of a sudden it's a good idea, right? To recognize some of these former great stars. Rocket Richard, for me, it's too soon. I would leave Rocket Richard as the Rocket Richard, but
right, for sure.
I'm open for that. You agree?
Yes, I do. Okay. Absolutely, I do. I don't think there's any need to change that award right now.
The Norris Trophy, again, I think we'll agree it's a flat out no-brainer. I mean, when I think of, how the Norris Trophy is presented annually, it's not the best defensive defenseman. It's normally the most offensive defenseman, which, oftentimes they end up being both, best defenseman, because they generate offense. But when I think of that, I think of Bobby Orr and how he changed the position forever when he was a star in the National Hockey League. And he also won the Norris Trophy 8 times. So is that basically a slam dunk for you?
It is for, I can't think of a player that changed their position more. Maybe the only one similar is Patrick Waugh. Because before Patrick Waugh showed up, nobody was in that butterfly. And when he showed up, I remember thinking, well, there's so much room over his shoulders. We'll just shoot it over his shoulders. Well, that was in 1985. So
Yeah.
it really wasn't the case. So yeah, the Orr for sure for me. That's an easy one.
Okay, Patrick, why you mentioned. So now let's go to the Vezina Trophy. And again, I appreciate your read on this more than mine. Mine is just an assessment of some of the reporting that's been done and talking about the renaming of this. And more than a few look at Dominik Hasek and the 6 Vezinas that he won, recognizing George Vezina back in the day, but who would meet the criteria for your renaming the Vezina?
Well, there's 3 really. It's kind of the trinity of them, and it's Hasek, Waugh, and Brodeur. And but this honestly, of all the ones to think about of a name, you said the defenseman slam dunk Bobby Orr, and this is not a slam dunk for me. But it's Hasek or Waugh, and I do think I would select Hasek, and the reason, one of the reasons being, is if we're acknowledging the growth and the history of the game, a European netminder that came from the Czech Republic and played a large portion of his generational time in a style and a success that other people just didn't have. So I think for those reasons, I would call it the Hasek.
Okay. I mean, trailblazer for sure. There's no question about that. The next one we're going to jump to is the Selke. Now, this one is challenging for me, and it's for the most defensive forward. I mean, again, automatically, I think of Patrice Bergeron. So maybe you wait until Patrice, he's on a 1-year deal because he's trying to win another Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins, and then it feels like retirement is likely. So is it fitting to then jump in that direction so soon after a player retires? I don't know. I'm open to debate on that, even though he, again, seems like a no-brainer. Bob Gainey, how many did Gainey win? 4?
I think 3 or 4 for sure.
Yeah. What do you think?
This is a tough one because Patrice Bergeron is clearly an active player, and yet if you want somebody on the name of your trophy, like, wouldn't Patrice Bergeron check just about every box?
Pretty much.
And if you're updating the awards and you say no, it's too soon and it's going to be Bob Gainey, and then we're going to skip in 10 years to Patrice Bergeron, I don't know how that does anybody any good either. Although it's impossible for me, at my age, to think about Bob Gainey and not think of him as being the best defensive forward, because he is. But because if you make this step, this is an evolving process. It's not like in X number of years, should there be a trophy with Connor McDavid's name on it? Probably, if we're doing this exercise now. So I think to do it for a short time, to rename it later on, this one is a debatable one for me, only because Bergeron is still active. Here's the other thing, Dregs. One thing that I want in conjunction with this is when you get to the award ceremony, I want those players to present the trophies.
That would be cool. Yeah.
I think, with his namesake trophy, here is Wayne Gretzky, here is Dominik Hasek, here. Yeah. I just think it would be an amazing spectacle.
Okay. The Calder for the Rookie of the Year.
Who scored the most goals as a rookie?
Yeah, I mean, was it Mario was it 43?
Was it Mario or
Timo?
Timo, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's for the Rookie of the Year, it's only for the first year. It doesn't matter. The guy could have scored 92 goals and then never again.
Yeah.
But it's for the Rookie of the Year. And so my first jump is to Solani.
Interesting. Well, and you're not wrong, right? I mean, again, when you're basing it purely on criteria, it's only going to happen once. So you're right.
He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to have a track record. He's just got to do it once.
Yeah, I mean, memory serves. I think it was like 84, 85 when Mario broke in, and was it 100 points? I think he had 43 goals and 57 assists.
Yeah,
I mean,
ridiculous.
it
He
was an
scored.
explosion
Okay,
of
but
offense.
he scored his first shift too.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, turn. You know, so anyways, but I have Mario somewhere else on my list. But
Okay.
so for me, it is. I would pick Solani, but I probably want to go through a few more names just to make sure.
Okay. Well, you're setting us up here. So where do you have Mario on another list?
Conn Smythe.
Ah, of course. Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
have, and to me that's probably the first trophy that should be renamed. And
Yeah. Should be.
but you know, so Mario would be my choice there. On the list of trophies that doesn't get mentioned is the Lady Byng, which to me
Yeah.
is
Okay. I'm going to be honest
nobody
here.
even know. Yeah. Who knows who they like? I don't know.
I've covered the National Hockey League since the early 90s, right? And more than my share of NHL award shows and whatnot. And I'm thinking the Lady Byng because you and we knew that we were going to talk about the trophies, and you said, don't forget the Lady Byng. And I'm like, okay, well, I know what the Lady Byng is, but then I'm like, I have no idea who Lady Byng is. Like, I know what the trophy is awarded for, but I don't know. So I quickly Google the wife of Lord Byng of Vimy in 1924.
Well, of course, clearly the answer was Mr. Byng's wife. Like, come on.
It's a Seinfeld
for me,
episode.
That's Jean Beliveau.
Is it? That's interesting because there was a stretch where he had some penalty time, right?
But just think of what is the enduring legacy of Jean Beliveau.
Yeah. It's
class.
Gentlemen.
And so like to me, that is Jean Beliveau. Yes. You're allowed to be the Lady Byng winner if you have 20 penalty minutes. It never seems to work that way, but if I don't know, Jean Beliveau to me is one of the all-time greats of this sport and represented himself, his team, and the league in just remarkable fashion.
Yeah, I had Mike Bossy slightly ahead for the Lady Byng.
That's pretty amazing too. I mean, for everything that he went through when they were. Remember, when he came in, they were going to test him. He wasn't tough enough, and that was a little bit different era. And he just said, "You know what? That's amazing, Dregs. You bring that up because it brings back that story where he said, I'm just not going to fight anymore. I'm just not." Yeah. And it might sound trivial today, but when he said it, oh boy, that was something. And then he had to do it.
Yeah. Either or. I mean, again, what we've established here, and I think who have I missed? Oh, the Jack Adams, right?
Oh, it's Scotty Bowman.
I mean, that one, I don't think that there should be even a hesitation. I saw Scotty recently. What was it at? Was it in Tampa? It was at, he was part of some pregame ceremony. Man, for a 90-plus-year-old man, he gets around and is as lucid. I've heard him in recent interviews, sharp as they come.
Well, so here's if you've got a few minutes and you're at a game, just walk over and ask him what he thinks of the line matchups. It is unbelievable. He is amazing.
Yeah,
it's really. But to me, that's a
all right.
That's a check mark.
Again, bottom line here is, look, the NHL is going to make these changes. They will. There's no doubt that they will. When? I mean, that's a bigger question. But what we've established here in 15 minutes or less is it's not that difficult. And I don't think that there are going to be people lining up offended to whatever degree because the National Hockey League wants to recognize, God rest his soul, Mike Bossy, or the greatest goal scorer of all time in Wayne Gretzky. Like, it just feels so ridiculous that there isn't more of an openness to do this. So,
okay, here's one question for you, Dregs, as you said that. What if it takes them a couple of years to get around to this, right? Mm-hmm. And in that couple of years, Ovi's at 900 goals. then don't you kind of have to change the Rocket trophy?
You might, and I'd be fine with that too. I'd be
That's,
fine with
I'm just
that
saying, just as you said it, I was like,
Yeah.
what if he's got 900 goals? I think you probably got a call on him.
Well, he's in a bit of a dry spell right now. I mean, small one, little.
Do you think he'll ever get out of it?
One. Yeah, I
Do
think.
you think he'll ever get out? Yeah, he'll probably be okay.
By the way, we pre-recorded Chris Abbott from Betano.ca because, as we acknowledged off the top of the podcast, I mean, there's stuff going on in BC, and we weren't sure that you and I were going to be able to connect to do the podcast. So we had a little bit of fun at your expense off the top of the pre-record with Chris Abbott. So you wouldn't be surprised by that. Anyway, those are, what's that?
I was going to say, did we acknowledge last week's victor or no?
Yeah, we did. Kind of glossed over it. He had a lot going on. He had multiple plays in the World Cup final. I mean, he explains it in detail, did very, very well. Maybe a little too much detail because what I didn't know, and he explains, so at 2-0, Betano pays out, right? So he had bet on 2-0. He had bet on a tie at the end of regulation. So he goes to the washroom when it's 2-0. Must have been a long trip to the washroom because he comes back and the game is tied. So anyway, I'll let him explain more of it. But
yeah, good for him. Good for him.
We talked a little bit about it. So those are your headlines. Once again, thank you to our good friends at Boston Pizza.